Broadcasting live from low Earth orbit, where the view is out of this world, literally. Meet your host, Jeff, currently circling the planet at 28,000 kilometers an hour. Today, Jeff is beaming down to the historic Port Arthur in Tasmania to chat with the incredible adventurer, Elise Rose Richmond. Elise has danced, climbed mountains, skydived, kayaked the entire Murray River, and even trekked across the Gobi Desert on foot. But her most profound journey has been overcoming her battle with bulimia. Jeff will dive into Elise's inspiring story, from conquering nature's extremes to triumphing over personal challenges. Stay tuned for this remarkable conversation.
Well, Elise, lovely to see you this morning, and you're in Port Arthur at the present time.
I am. I've just returned from a ski trip in Japan and I'm back to my quiet little abode here in Port Arthur.
Well, of course, when we met, I was in the Salamanca markets, and here we are, your lovely book. I've read it cover to cover, and I was really most impressed with it. It's written in a very personable manner, I thought, very different to the usual, shall we say, gung-ho male adventure manner.
I think that's one of the comments I've definitely had as my husband writes adventure books as well about the same adventures. One of the major comments I've had is it's a lot more emotional than Luke's, which, you know, as a female, I dig into the emotional side of adventures, and Luke kind of gung-hos his way through it, I guess.
Yeah, well, that's fair enough. There's certainly some very personal observations in your various adventures, which I have to say makes a refreshing change from some of the books that I've read in relation to these sorts of adventures. And yes, you certainly have had a very interesting life. And it all started out with you going to India, of all places, and become a dancer.
Yeah, well, I guess I became a dancer a long time before that. I've danced since I was 5 years old and just loved that form of entertainment, and then moved into a performing arts high school and studied full time after high school. So I definitely was actively pursuing dance as a career. I just never thought it would take me to India, to Bollywood. But that was kind of where I landed my first contract. So it was 6 months as a standard backup dancer in Bollywood, dancing for some of the biggest movie stars over there that I had no idea about. But yeah, I'm kind of sitting on the lap of, you know, the Russell Crowe of of Bollywood without even really realizing it. But yeah, there was certainly a abrupt introduction to the world of travel.
Is there any flow-ons from that? Because you've certainly done a lot of other things in the interim.
Definitely, it's definitely without even realizing it at the time, it's been a big sort of springboard into lots of different types of things. So I actually tried to work in that sort of Bollywood industry, sending girls and trying to make sure that they were looked after over there, because I wasn't looked after when I was over there. So I tried to play that agent role for them to try to sort of smooth out the industry over there. But then, yeah, that culture itself, the Indian culture, was just so lively and so passionate and sensory overload. It really sort of led me to want to see other cultures.
Well then, following that, you had to leave that rather abruptly, and consequently, when you came back, you went through bulimia, which caused you a great deal of angst.
Yeah, it definitely I think caught me off guard potentially because I had been in an industry of dance where, your body type and your body shape and the look and all that kind of stuff is really important. And I'd sort of managed to not get drawn into that side of the industry. So when I came back and I sort of ended my dancing career, I guess, that's when it sort of sprung up on me, which I've sort of thought about in the future and thought, oh, that's strange that I managed to bypass that for so many years. Um, but yeah, it was a struggle on and off for a good 5 years. And having written my book and really delving into that side of things and not skimping on the details, I guess. I'm really glad I have done that because there has been so many girls that have reached out to me that are struggling with the same thing currently or have done in the past. And it's that kind of taboo topic, and I guess when I was going through it, it was very secretive. It's a very secretive disease. So I'm glad that it's sort of helping other girls see the light.
Yes, well, your description of it is pretty dramatic. And did you feel that any professional help was going to be of any use to you at that time?
I was so young, in like early 20s. I didn't really understand psychology, psychiatry, or the mind, the brain, and the body. So I think it was less talked about, 20 years ago. Now it's very open, um, with people talking about mental health, but I didn't, without my mum saying, we need to take you to a doctor, I don't know that I would have gone down that path. So it was her wisdom that said, look, this is out of my realm. I need help here. So she kind of led me down the psychology route, which I'm very, very grateful for.
So, what advice would you have to anyone suffering from this now?
I guess my advice, and I write about it in the book, is that you can heal. I was told very early on that you're going to have this disease, and this wasn't by a professional. This was just by other girls who had suffered from it. You're going to have this disease for the rest of your life. You'll always be in the gray. There's never a you're out of it kind of moment, and that is a flat out lie. So I am completely healed. I have no symptoms of bulimia or eating disorders anymore. So my suggestion would be, if you want to heal, you can heal. You just sometimes need external help, and that's okay.
Oh. Well, that sort of comment wouldn't exactly help in terms of you thinking you're going to get over it. And that is to say, being told, well, you've got the rest of your life. That's a real burden to.
Oh, completely. And it goes for, I work in the rehabilitation space now, for physical injuries. It goes for physical injuries as well. If someone's told, look, you've got motor neurons, you're going to go downhill from here, you know what? A person's going to go downhill from that day because they've been told that. So the worst thing you could ever do for someone who's suffering from any sort of illness or disorder is to tell them there's no hope. You're done, because that sets your thoughts on a path that is hard to recover from.
Well, following that, you certainly grabbed life with both hands and made a radical change, particularly when you started to get into the bodybuilding routines and so forth. How successful were you in that area?
The bodybuilding was sort of, it was a rapid fire, it's, I guess, a way for me to sort of heal my relationship with food, which took a very bad turn. Don't recommend bodybuilding for anyone with an eating disorder. But yeah, I actually, unfortunately, did quite well in that space. So, it sort of told me that my terrible eating habits was a good thing, and continued me down that path for probably a little bit too long. But yeah, I did well in that space, and then realized that it was leading me on a path of destruction, and it was definitely not the right sport for me. But I've always been athletic, and I knew I needed to channel my athleticism somewhere. So I moved into the sport of CrossFit, and then met my now husband, and we moved to Thailand together, and I was able to pursue that sport quite rigorously.
Yes, I've seen some of your videos in relation to your heavy duty exercises. It makes me think, golly, I don't think I could ever have done that. But anyway, suffice to say that that was a very intense period in that business.
Yeah, definitely. I like to sort of rip the band-aid off with things and not, if I'm like, okay, I want to make it to CrossFit Regionals, which was a higher event in the sport at that time. Um, I'm like, well, let's not dwell on this. Like, let's go all in and see if I can get there. And I was able to do that in a really short space of time. And then I kind of realized, yep, that's me done in this sport, and let's kind of move on. And that's kind of where adventures came into it.
Hmm. Well, you really came to an abrupt halt in that, I guess, and then decided to do completely different things. I mean, that was a really abrupt change. And that's when you really started to get stuck into, I suppose you could say, the adventures with deciding to cross the Gobi Desert.
Yeah, that was my introduction into the expedition world. My husband had done big adventures in the mountains, and sort of, tackled Mother Nature before quite heavily. And yeah, we kind of put our heads together and thought about what we could come up with that he hadn't done before, and something unusual, and something that was going to test us really physically and mentally. And yeah, we came up with crossing the Gobi Desert in Mongolia, so the Mongolian section of it, from west to east. And in the end, it was about 1,800 kilometers. And we designed our own carts made of alloy in Thailand, got them built there, and shipped them over to Mongolia, and loaded all of our supplies, which equated to about 150 kilos of gear, and went for a little walk across the desert.
Just like a walk in the park. Yeah, so
Yeah.
what do you think was the toughest moment in that particular trip?
Oh,
You
there
are
was.
some pretty dramatic temperature extremes, as I recall.
Yeah, so we decided to go in between seasons, thinking that would be the best, because Mongolian seasons can swing 50 degrees either direction. So, you've got massive snows in the winter, minus 50 degrees, and then in the summer, you've got plus 40, plus 45 sort of degree temperatures. So, the in between season seemed pretty obvious choice. But yeah, we had snow, we had 45 degrees. We kind of woke up never really knowing what we were going to experience. So we had enough gear for every season. But it was really water that was our main sort of thing that we needed to focus on, because there is wells dotted along the desert, but it's this tiny little rock that only the nomads know about, and you lift the rock and there's the well. So we did have guides to sort of help us find that water, because that was our lifesaver out there.
And you met some lovely people in Mongolia, the locals. So, what was your best experience with them, do you think?
Oh, the nomads were incredible, just their ability to withstand the nature out there. But you'd have one ger or yurt, that traditional Mongolian style home. And you'd be coming along, and all of a sudden people would start spilling out. And, out of this tiny yurt, there might be 20 family members that spill out the door and start offering you cheeses and tea and all these different things and inviting you into their home. And I try to put myself in that situation. Would that happen in Australia? Would someone in the middle of the desert invite you into their home and do all those beautiful things for you? So there was some really special experiences with the nomads.
And were you tempted to just pull the pin and give it up at any stage?
There was one day, I remember it well, day 16. Yeah, we had the design of our cart was wheelchair wheels. So we'd done that so we wouldn't have to fix punctures and worry ourselves with that side of things. So there's two wheelchair wheels on either side of our carts. And one day, and been given advice that there wasn't a whole lot of sand in the desert, surprisingly. And we're like, okay, not how I know deserts, but we'll see. So day 16 was all sand all day long, and I was sort of leading the charge, mainly because I was the slowest. So I would sort of set the pace so I didn't get lost in the back. And it was just tough going, and my soul was breaking pretty much from minute one. And we kind of had a bit of a team meeting, and one of the team members wanted to pull the pin, and we kind of went round and round and decided to stay, but to lighten the load, to get a bit of weight off our carts. But yeah, that was a tough day.
But you did push through and you finally got to the end. And what happened then?
So we got to the end. It was 57 days in the end. And it was sort of a beautiful representation of adventure. You just spent all that time trying to lug all this gear across the desert, and then you're thrown in a van and zipped back to Ulaanbaatar, and you get back to the hotel and someone asks you about what you've just done. And it was my first big expedition, and I was so proud. I was exhausted, and I just wanted to tell someone about it. But yeah, no one really cared. So it was kind of a good way to say, look, don't do these things for anyone else, just do them for yourself. So that's kind of spiraled into what's now been, nearly a decade of big adventures.
So what was your next adventure following the Gobi Desert?
So after the Gobi, I did dip my toe back into the world of CrossFit to sort of tick that box, because I hadn't made it to regionals. So I put my head down, bum up, and got back to regionals that year, which I was pretty stoked about. And then I could sort of clear that debt and move on. The next big trip we kayaked down the Murray River in Australia. So it was 2,200 kilometers of kayaking.
And you did this in conjunction with your father-in-law.
Yes, he was a splendid addition to the team. It was actually his dream that started this adventure. So he's always wanted to go down the Murray in a fishing tinny. So we kind of nudged him along and said, look, we'll jump in kayaks, you do the tinny, and off we went.
What do you think was the most notable aspect of that particular trip?
I think for myself, it made me realize that you don't need to really be suffering on an adventure to have an incredible experience and memorable moments. I'd always assumed that, probably based off my husband's experience of being in the mountains, that there needed to be this big point of suffering, of really pushing your physical limits and all that kind of stuff. But the Murray was just so chilled, so beautiful. We had campfires every night. We were fishing, catching cod, and just telling stories around a fire. And we were just taking our time on the river each day. We had no set timeline. It ended up taking us about 8 weeks. But we never forced our bodies. We rested when we needed to, and it was a good reminder that you don't need to crush yourself physically.
Right. And then further adventures in Australia. Well, you uh, had a adventure cycling from the north down to the south.
Yeah, it I guess the Murray made us go, oh, well, what else can we do in Australia as well? Because we've always looked overseas for adventure for whatever reason. But COVID hit and our backyard was the only place we could go. So yeah, we decided to cycle from Darwin down to Port Augusta in that time. And we were sort of getting chased by border closures, but it was, yeah, a good month and a bit of basically cycling on our own, and we got some of Australia's most incredible spots to ourselves, including Uluru. We walked around the whole base and had sunset with maybe one other person around, so it was a really rare and spectacular sort of moment for us.
Certainly would be. And then you decided to uh, follow on from that with other things. A mere, uh, what was it, 6 mountains you decided that you were going to climb?
Yeah. So I had decided to go back to India and climb a mountain called Satapanth. This was before the Murray River, but I was declined at the border because of whatever happened in my Bollywood days. So I wasn't actually allowed into the country. So that mountain got squashed. After the Murray, I did go over to Nepal and climb Mount Amadablam. And that was a baptism by fire into the mountaineering space, a really technical, sustained, yeah, really tough mountain to sort of throw in as my first mountain. And then, yeah, kept going back to Nepal and tackled Mirror Peak, Lobuche, and Island Peak over there as well.
A non-mountain climber like me, uh, that sounds pretty scary, some of the things that you did there. And also, one of the less attractive aspects is the mess and the filth left on those mountains by all of the people who trek up there these days. That must have been a bit of a downer.
Yeah, I mean, you have these, I guess it's kind of similar to any little tourist attraction that you head to now. You have this image of what it's going to be based on photos you've seen or recounts of it. And especially on Amadablam, it was very upsetting to see how much trash people had left. I kind of take the same concept of leaving weight plates on the leg press in the gym. If you can take it up there, you can bring it back down. So um, that's, yeah, that was a bit unfortunate. And it's even more unfortunate to have to carry someone else's poo bags down a mountain because you feel inclined to clean it up a little bit. Um, but yeah, that is an aspect of mountaineering that is being talked about a lot more now. So hopefully we can sort out that problem.
And then you elected to take up skydiving as well. That
Yeah,
pretty exciting.
that was a bit exciting. I think I had definitely always wanted to do my license on my own, so to be able to solo skydive. And I guess I have that mentality of, look, if you want to do something, do it. Don't think about doing it for 10 years and then do it and realize you don't really like it. So you just waste 10 years. So me and Luke dove into skydiving full force. He had the attitude of trying to get to base jumping, so like a bit of more extreme version of the sport. But yeah, I just wanted to see what it was like, and I realized I loved being under a paraglide, a wing, I guess. The free fall I could take or leave. So that has kind of spiraled into paragliding. So now we do try to combine our mountaineering and paragliding. So we walk our paraglider up to the top of the mountain and then save our knees and fly down.
What prompted you to write your book, which I might add is a wonderful achievement? And it's, as I said before, it's certainly different to most of the male adventurers' text, that's for sure.
I think the point you just made there is a lot of the adventure books out there are by males. And that's what I grew up reading and loving, the Into Thin Airs and all Into the Wild and all those kind of books, all male orientated and male written. So I wanted to sort of put the female adventure stories out there, and the female perspective on adventure, because it's not really out there that much. But I also had so many journals from my time in my adventures and in my early years that, it seemed a waste to sort of leave them just lying around and not really combine them into something cohesive and that someone else could get something out of. So yeah, I will continue writing, hopefully. There is lots more adventures to come, so hopefully many more adventure books to follow.
So I guess the obvious question now is, where can someone get your book and what's it called?
My book is called Take It Outside. It is on my website, eliseRoseRichmond.com. And if you are not in Australia, you can get it on Amazon.
Okay, well, I certainly enjoyed our little meeting in the market at Salamanca Place, and I hadn't realised at the time that your husband Luke was just further up there. I did actually speak to him, but not realising there was a connection at the time. So he's certainly had a few interesting expeditions, not the least of which is rowing across the Atlantic, for example. Yes. So what's your next adventure, Elise?
The next adventure. So I'm on a upskilling mission this year. I'm learning to ski, hopefully well. So I have the long-term vision of skiing across Greenland. So that is first I need to learn to ski though. So that is my main mission this year, is to get really confident in the snow.
You might have to get Donald Trump's permission to do that.
Yeah, I got to be quick about it.
Well, look, thank you very much for this little chat, Elise. It's been lovely talking to you, and I certainly will follow your adventures with great interest. So, and I look forward to your next book. Thanks a lot, and best of luck for your endeavors.
Thanks, Jeff.
If you or someone you know is struggling with bulimia or a similar issue, take Elise's advice. Don't face it alone. Seek professional help and support. There's always a path to recovery.